I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. Before we get started, just a couple quick things. I want to let everybody know that, especially those who haven't participated in webinars in the past, that all these webinars are recorded and posted on our various pages, our YouTube channel, our blog, and obviously through the website, ZenoLink.com. And can be accessed by Twitter links and Facebook. So if you'd like to go back and download or listen to the webinar, or if you have friends or peers that wanted to make the webinar that couldn't, this will be available. We usually try to get it posted within a day or two of the actual event. So it should be online by tomorrow if all goes well. So tonight's webinar is kind of a slightly different webinar than the webinars we've been having, where we've been looking more at the fundamental biomechanics of certain sports. Tonight's webinar is a bit special in that we'll be taking a look at a ZenoLink-sponsored professional golfer, young golfer by the name of Clark Klaasen. And what we're going to be doing is tracking his progress through qualifying school this year. Clark is a young pro, a couple years pro now. This will be the, I believe, his second attempt at qualifying school. And what we'd like to do is kind of mark his progress from a biomechanics perspective, looking at first data and looking at his biomechanics and where his body is physically going into each stage, starting with stage 1 here. He'll be playing within the next week or so. And then looking at what, based on his biomechanics and his body movement, his activity-specific coordination, what we're doing with him on his progressive skills or PST training. Obviously, if you're not familiar with PST, I'm going to try to, I'll overview it the best I can tonight, but if you want some more detailed explanation as to what progressive skills training is, we have a PST primer on our YouTube channel and on our blog that covers in quite a bit of detail what progressive skills training is. It's a blend of traditional strength conditioning, functional training, with activity-specific movement that might be more related to coaching, blending of those two to elicit certain mechanical and neuromechanical responses in an effort primarily to change movement pattern and improve outcome through more efficient, more effective movement pattern. So somewhere between your traditional strength and conditioning and your coaching. I'd like to do just really quick, just take a quick look at Clark's basic profile, so you get a basic idea of who he is. We're going to be doing an interview with Clark on Wednesday at 8 o'clock, this Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and we're going to talk about what it's taken him to get here, which is quite interesting. Watching him go through this process, as we've watched many golfers now. It started all the way back. One of the first guys we watched go through this process was Brian Gay, and it was an amazing process to watch him develop as a player, become part of the PGA Tour, and then work his way through the tour as well. And now we get a chance to sort of document it using web technology and all the social networking technology to sort of document what someone like Clark goes through to finally make it to that and play at that level and compete and be successful at that level. Like I said, Clark is a young player. He's 25. He's from Michigan. We've been working with him now for a number of years. He was at Duke University. We were working with him when he was at Duke. His coach, Brad Dean, is a guy who initiated the contact and really is sort of the facilitator, the point person of our technology with Clark. Clark, like I said, has been pro for about 2 years now, and he's been predominantly playing on the e-golf tour, but also plays different events and Monday morning qualifying and different stuff, but predominantly playing on the e-golf tour, which is a nice tour as far as developmental stuff goes. The competition is great, but also gives the athletes the ability to be reasonable with the travel, the expenses, and really develop. So, Clark is an athlete that we sponsor, that ZenoLink sponsors as well, and we think Clark is going to be something really special here in the not-so-distant future. So it's exciting for us to be able to present this data. What I'll do tonight is start with the data itself and explain what we see in the data as far as its biomechanical movement. And then we'll summarize, kind of what we see and what we want to do with the training. And then we will come back and look at the training itself, the progressive skills training, and the way we've broken it up by stage and by week and by session, so you can see the progressions that we would use to not just peak them for stage 1. Our main focus is peaking them for stage 3, and so we want to systematically bring him up. Now he's been playing obviously all year, and this is sort of the end of the season, but we want to recycle and back up through the basic stages of development, basic fundamental skill development, advanced skill development, and speed development. And I'll show you how we break that down. Tonight we're going to just focus on the base, stage 1 fundamental skill development, and then as we move forward, we'll continue to advance and show you what we're doing with it on each stage. So we'll get right to the data. Some of you, this stuff might be somewhat familiar. For many of you that might be listening, this is pretty foreign or a different way to look at the golf swing. So what I am going to try to do is I'm going to try to get through this pretty reasonably. And if you do have questions as we go along, type them into the questions section on your control panel, and I'll try to get to them at the end of the session if possible, and I'll try to answer the questions the best that I can. Any questions that I don't get to or I can't really answer in this format, I'll try to email you or connect with you some way, shape, or form so I can answer them with you directly. When we look at an athlete, and this goes with any sport really, we begin in what we call a performance profile. And in the performance profile, what we're essentially looking at primarily is what we call a performance factor. And the performance factor is essentially telling us how effective the athlete is utilizing what they produce in terms of power potential or speed potential during the activity at the point of impact or at the point of release if you're throwing. So in this case, we're focused on golf. We're going to look at how effective Clark is utilizing speed potential or power potential at impact with the ball. What the performance factor does is it adds up the percent maximum linear speed output, so the club head speed, if you will, miles per hour, with the percent maximum angular release speed. So when those two are added together, the highest the performance factor is going to be is 200, and that's 100% utilization of both linear release or angular release speed and linear output speed or sort of maximum club head speed through the impact zone. The normals, when we look at the normals are actually a compilation of elite level tour player over the last 15, 20 years. There's golfers in our normal database that include the likes of Greg Norman and Nick Faldo and Price and Faxon and Els, all the way up to the more modern, more contemporary top golfers, including individuals like Anthony Kim and Justin Rose. And those are collected as a function of the testing that's being done through our different partners, and then they're just added anonymously into our database. So we have a really nice database of some of the top golfers over the last 20 years. So the normals are really elite level population, really the elite of the elite, which gives you an idea. The one thing I will tell you that when we're looking at the normals, that these normals are produced off of driver swings. So distal end speed, like club head speed, is going to be a bit higher. Clark is swinging in irons, so his distal end speed is going to be a little bit lower. But other than that, the functional movement patterns, the angular speeds, and things like that are comparable. So what we see with Clark is that he's using 94% of his peak linear speed or his peak club head speed. He's only using 73% of his peak angular speed. 73% is actually not too bad compared to the average population, but it's a little off the mark compared to the elite population, and that's the population that Clark wants to be playing against here in the very near future. So again, to just kind of map this out for you, what we're looking at is the percent utilization of angular release, so between the arms and the club shaft, and then the percent utilization of the linear output and the club head speed that produces. So what this tells us is that Clark is pretty effective, reasonably effective using what he produces, but there is still a big chunk of what he produces that he's not quite getting to the ball. So he has the ability, he produces speed that he's not actually using. So what we want to look at when we look at his biomechanics is where are those power leaks? What are the issues? What are the things that are leaking that percentage of power that he's not utilizing. Now, if we were looking at him in a pure off-season program, we wouldn't, worry too much about the finer details, and we would just get to, a more of a concerted off-season program and try to make significant change. With Clark, being number one at the level he is, and number two where he is in his season, especially going into tour school or qualifying school, where we're trying to really just tweak him. We're not trying to make wholesale changes. We're only trying to help him utilize what he's produced and help him fill in the gaps a little bit. We're not trying to make wholesale changes. So the approach with Clark is a little different than we may approach with Clark, say, after qualifying school later this winter, or with other athletes that are in really they're down off-season kind of time. So that's something also to take into consideration as we look at the data. So what we then look at is the actual power generation process itself, which we refer to as the kinetic link segmental summation. And what we're looking at is the golfer's ability to connect from the ground up, creating speed and momentum with bigger, heavier segments, the legs, the torso, transferring that speed through the torso to the next segment, which we would consider upper torso or upper body. Then the rotational speed output of the arms, the next lighter segment in the chain. And then eventually looking at the transfer of speed to the club shaft itself as it's released into the impact zone. And so what we look at in this graph is the end of the backswing, transitioning to downswing. All these positive values would be the downswing. This vertical line would indicate impact zone. One thing to notice right away is that this graph is just about a little over a half a second. So when you consider the timing and the ballistic nature of the golf swing, from the end of the backswing to impact, we're talking about a half a second. And that, these things are happening at extreme speeds, very ballistically, very dynamically. So when we break it down, we have the luxury of looking at it on a graph and kind of, evaluating it, taking our time, being, nitpicky almost about what's going on. In the swing itself, we're talking about very, very little time. So fractions of a second make all the difference in the world. So what we typically like to see here, your elite level golfers, is the lower body driving the power process, speed transfer to the, so we have hip segment, shoulder segment, arm segment, and then the release of the club into the impact zone. So we get a nice transition of speed, each body segment building, the momentum transferred along, a lot like the crack of a whip, working from the base and the big end to the very small end, creating a considerable amount of speed by the time we funnel that speed out to the most distal end of the system. What we see in Clark's case is a very athletic movement. We see lower body, great lower body speed, good transfer to the upper body, good transfer to the arms. Where we see, one of the issues that we see here is that the timing gets a little compressed. This happens a little close to the impact zone. There's not a whole lot of room for the club to release effectively off of the arm, so Clark tends to force the club away from the body a little bit and doesn't fully release the club. So he doesn't maximize that club release power, although he does a really good job, and he's gotten considerably better. And the better he gets, not only the more power, he'll even tell you, hopefully on Wednesday when we get a chance, we'll talk about the changes he's experiencing in his game. Distance being one, he's considerably longer. Efficiency of movement, consistency of movement, but he still has more to go. He's got more in the tank, which is a really good thing for someone like Clark, playing as well as he is right now, and continues to play, and will play through Q school, to know that he still has considerably more in the tank, both from an output perspective as well as an efficiency perspective. One of the things that you see in this graph, though, that we're going to work on, again, we're not trying to make wholesale changes as he moves into qualifying school. We don't have enough time for that, so we're just working on perfecting what he has and improving what he has and tweaking it so that he starts to peak out each stage and really hits its stride, meshing both mechanics and speed output by third stage. But you can see that the arms tend to outpace the body just a little bit as the downswing is initiated, and so as a result, the club kind of gets caught a little bit and doesn't release as effectively as it might. So, one of the things that we will do here is look at what are the causes of biomechanically speaking, of the arms kind of outpacing the body a little bit, and where is he in terms of timing, and what's causing some of this this compressed timing, and let's help him spread it out a little bit and make sure that he's getting the most out of his swing, again, without making wholesale changes or any dramatic changes to his swing. We just want to fine-tune. So what we'll then look at is stability. And when we look at stability, we look at two primary areas. First, lower body mechanics. In lower body mechanics, we look at the relationship between forward weight shift, or what we'll call the linear component, and rotational component, or rotation of the pelvis. Since we don't have him standing on force plates, the next best thing is to evaluate how he moves, how he blends linear and rotational. Linear, the movement of the center of mass relative to the center of pressure, produces a forward momentum that can be then turned into rotational torque. So the relationship between the linear and the rotational is crucial to creating, number one, power, but also creating a solid foundation for the rest of the kinetic length to take place. So what we typically see is what we see here with Clark is effective lateral stability or linear stability at the end of the backswing. So what we want is, we want him to stay connected to the ground on the rear foot. We want him soft in the knee, soft in the hip, so he's athletic and maintaining good pressure through the rear foot. We want him, as a result of that, to rotate his pelvis perpendicular to the bottom of the spine. We don't want him to sway or shift or sort of slide, because he'll lose contact with the ground, and he'll also lose his ability to accelerate the pelvis and engage the core musculature. So he stabilizes really well. We then see backswing to downswing transition. We like to see a nice fluid change of direction, and we like to see forward weight shift occurring in unison or in concert with the beginning of the rotational acceleration of the lower body. We want the rotational acceleration of the lower body to be facilitated by that forward weight shift and that forward momentum. So in Clark's case, very nice forward weight shift. You can see you can start forward weight shift. Here's transition. There's just a little tiny fraction of a second timing issue that we're going to continue to work on, get him to press forward and initiate the lower body a little bit sooner. And again, this isn't the kind of thing that happens so fast. We're talking literally fractions, milliseconds. This isn't something Clark can voluntarily control or try to do. The way we do this, and I'll explain better when we get into the PST, is by continuing to train the body to grip the ground, produce certain patterns of ground reaction force and torque production, where we emphasize quickness and acceleration through the blending of linear and rotational, controlling the linear and rotational, staying in contact with the ground and using that contact to better blend linear and rotational. So we do it by training movement pattern, by training quickness and fast switch recruitment in certain patterns, and we do it away from the golf swing itself. And trying to think yourself through this in the golf swing is impossible and will only cause additional problems. So we're talking about literally fractions of a second. So we're going to definitely want to focus on working with Clark to continue to maintain a good interaction with the ground, to stay lively and quick with his lower body, stay active with his lower body, stay engaged in the core, and use the ground to create torque and accelerate and sort of drive the power process. The other thing we see is that he doesn't shift weight forward quite as much as he might want to get it a little bit more into the lead side. We typically see tour players moving forward about 17 centimeters from initiation of the downswing, and Clark's about 14 centimeters. So a little bit more shift. I mean, we're talking a couple centimeters, but getting a little bit more foundation into the lead side, and then stabilizing the lead side a little bit better. So again, PST is going to work them through a bunch of exercises where we emphasize these movements over and over and over again, slowly and at speed, and in the context of the golf swing. So he doesn't have to think about it, but his body just reacts. And in this case, he's so close and so near what we really want. We're just tweaking this pattern. There's no wholesale change involved at this level. The next area that we're going to look at then is spine stability. Now the spine or the core sits on top of the foundation of the lower body, so it makes sense then to look, after we look at lower body, look at what the spine and the core does. Number one, for maintaining an axis of rotation, so we want the core to maintain, or the spine to maintain an axis of rotation, and we want body segments to work perpendicular to that axis of rotation. Now, as they're moving perpendicular to this axis of rotation, they're shifted linearly. So you're not just rotating. You're not just twisting in a barrel, so to speak. But that being said, we don't want a lot of tipping and swaying with the spine. What happens then is if the spine stays nice and stacked or stable, and we work perpendicular, we have good range of motion, effective function, and good core engagement or muscular engagement. If we start bending the spine for whatever reason, tipping one way or the other, extending, lat bending, if we start doing that, we start compressing the spine, especially through the middle of the back. We are going to restrict functional movement, then we get recruitment, and then we're also going to limit the ability to pull muscles along their natural line of action, stretch muscles, contract muscles, and produce power, not only in terms of power output, but in terms of sequence and kinetic linking. So a stable core is absolutely crucial. Now, you can have strong core musculature and have a completely unstable axis of rotation. So it's not just core strength, it's core coordination that we're looking at here. So what we look at to assess this is flexion extension and left and right lateral bending. We do this relative to the anatomy. So we look at it dynamically, not with respect to the pitch of the spine or the pitch of the body relative to the ball in a global environment, like you might if you're a golf instructor looking at video and looking at whether or not they stay in a certain orientation. What we're looking at is the actual anatomical version of this, where we're looking at how effectively they stabilize the spine relative to the anatomy. What we typically see here is about 28, 30 degrees forward flexion and going into some extension. And believe it or not, if they do this effectively, they're going to get about 8 to 10 degrees of left lateral bend, followed by some gradual right bend. So they're actually going to have some left bend. We don't want an excessive left bend, because then you start leaning, reverse pivoting, things like that. Well, but if Clark stabilizes here and rotates around a spine that's stable, he will actually, because of the anatomy, upper torso relative to lower torso, will start to bend a little bit into left bending along the frontal plane. So anatomically, he'll actually have left bending, and that's important. We want that pattern. So what we see in Clark is that he's pretty stable with his posture, but his dynamic posture is a little bit more upright, a little bit more left bend than we would expect. And that can impact his ability to engage the core musculature and the timing of the kinetic link and stuff like that. So what we want to do is we want to, off a stable base, we want to continue to work on spine stabilization or core stabilization, at the same time looking at dynamic core rotation, both at the pelvis and at the upper thoracic or the upper torso. So again, these are exercises we're going to get him to keep training his body to move just a little bit more effectively, get more use out of musculature, and improve timing, especially related to the release of the club. And again, he's very, very close in all of these areas, so we're not talking about dramatic change. We're talking about tweaking what he's already doing to get a little bit more out of him, and then move in the second stage where we do a little bit more advanced stuff, and then the third stage really putting this together with respect to power and speed. The next area that we look at, we evaluate, is muscular loading. And in muscular loading, what we look at is the ability to stretch, shorten, or pre-stretch muscles prior to contraction. We're first going to look at stretch, shorten through the core. And what you're looking at in this graph here is you're looking for a pattern that looks like a V. So basically what we look at is this sort of like this would be your dynamic X factor kind of stuff. And what we're really looking at is the rate of stretch on the core musculature, the rate of response, or amortization, how quickly the muscles or group of muscles go from being stretched to contracting, and changing direction from being lengthened to shortened, and then how fast they shorten relative to power and relative to force, and then looking for this to occur in the downswing as a function of that kinetic link process between the hips and shoulders. So that's what we're looking for. In Clark's case, it all comes together very nicely, except the loading process is a little bit less than what we would expect. So it's less dynamic than what we would expect. He's not going to get as much muscular output, or he's going to reduce the efficiency of that output a little bit. And again, that has to do with a little bit of that lower body stuff and a little bit of that spine stuff. If we correct that stuff a little bit, we improve those dynamics just a little bit, he's going to load the musculature way more effectively. So he's going to work less hard and get more out of those muscles. The efficiency will improve not only power, but his ability to put together several rounds in a row and, put together several stages in a row. Quickly, we'll take a look at upper body. I'm going to finish up and then we'll get into training, and then I'll try to answer any questions that there may be as they're being added into the question list there. Here we're looking at the dynamic stretch of the upper back, the shoulders, and the arms. Again, we would look for that V pattern to occur now in the downswing as a function of the kinetic link between the shoulders and the arms. In this case, we don't see very good dynamic loading. So one of the Achilles heels or weaknesses in this swing as far as muscular output in terms of efficiency and power is really the engagement of the upper body. And again, this is again related to lower body foundational stuff and some of the spine stuff. A little bit extended, a little bit of left bend. Not really pulling exactly against the muscles along their line of action. It's going to rob Clark of some efficiency and some power, and that's going to affect consistency. So we want to improve it the best that we can to give them as much power and efficiency and consistency as we can as we go through the next few months in qualifying school. The last area we'll take a quick look at, and then we'll talk about training, and then I'll try to answer some questions, is the delivery of speed into the impact zone. So I just last week was at a coaching roundtable Mike Adams held with a bunch of top 100 teachers, and Brian Manziel was there, a bunch of guys who are very familiar with the D-plane. I thought it was fascinating and really right on. What's interesting is we don't measure D-plane exactly. You need stuff like Flight Scope or TrackMan to do a really good job of that. But what we do measure, and we've been measuring now for 15 years or more, is the delivery of speed, which is the direction component, not the face orientation, but the direction component, which tells you a lot about what the player is doing, how efficient they are in terms of delivering the speed that they do produce and the power that they do produce into the impact zone. So what we look at is as a golfer swings, they're creating momentum, mass times velocity. We're going to focus on the velocity right now, but a whole other webinar would be on the whole idea of momentum as well. Velocity is a function of angular release and then the linear output that it produces. So that's why we're looking at it when we look at the performance factor. Linear speed or club head speed has direction though. So speed along the target line we refer to as X. Speed up and down we refer to as Y. And speed inside out, outside in we refer to as Z. The speed is relative to the ball, and then obviously in conjunction with orientation, face orientation. But if you look at it from a delivery perspective, the squarer the speed is to the ball as the club comes into contact with the ball, the more effective or the greater the potential to transfer momentum from the club head to the ball. And what's interesting, when you look at Clark's, the vast majority of the speed available is along the target line. So you see him peeking out right here. The vast majority of that speed. When you look down, you'll see that at impact, there's very little up and down, in and out speed, and that's why he's so good. And the better he gets, the cleaner this is going to get. But what's interesting is you'll see that the Y and the Z cross just below the x-axis. You see this crossing just below the x-axis, which tells us that the delivery of speed isn't quite as square to the line of action as it could be. So as he improves and grows and develops slightly better foundation, slightly better core mechanics, slightly better delivery of the club, he's going to also deliver the speed more effectively as a function of the movement being very efficient. As long as he has good equipment and good setup, grip, stance stuff, he's going to deliver that speed very squarely and efficiently. So the key is the guys he wants to play against have fantastic collision dynamics, but they do it through near perfect, perfectly efficient biomechanics. So they're delivering that flow that we read off the TrackMan and Flight Scopes as all the criteria that we want for beautiful ball flight. They deliver that flow through a very efficient, very coordinated effort. If you're manufacturing that blow through a less than efficient, less than effective dynamic, then you're going to have holes in your game. You're going to have inconsistencies in that ability to strike that ball every time the same way, and you're going to sacrifice power. And over the long haul, round after round, tournament after tournament, you will break down faster as well. So all these things are important. So in a nutshell, Clark is really close on all of these things. And I don't have enough time to go into his past data, but if you can see the progress that he's been making over the last few years, it's phenomenal. He's really close to exactly where he wants to be as far as his biomechanics go. His game has really come together as well, and they're all really starting to mesh together for him very nicely here as his second year playing pro. So what we want to do with him, and I'm just going to go into the training here just real quick. So what we want to do with him is a quick overview. Stage one, again, we're going to look at just some simple fundamental skill development. He's already been through this. We cycle him through it a couple times every year, predominantly in the off season, and once probably again during the season in a small cycle. And then we're going to do another quick time here in very small format. So we're talking about each stage is a handful of sessions, a couple weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks if he has it. So very small little cycles. First, we're going to start him prior to stage one. Right now, he's about halfway through, a little bit more halfway through fundamental skill development. Just go back to some basic movement patterns, all the little things that we talked about, you know, perfecting that lower body movement, perfecting the spine stability stuff, the core coordination stuff, the release of the club, just tweaking it a little bit and really kind of honing it in very simple patterns, simple movements, simple kind of stuff, and very fundamental. As we move next into stage two, we're going to advance that skill development, start to add some dynamics, start to add some speed component, and work harder on really tweaking it at speed. And then as he moves into third stage, we'll really focus on the speed component through coordination. So we'll really work hard on blending the movements of 1 and 2, the fundamental and advanced skill development, into at-speed coordination, and really focus a lot on the speed outcome. So we'll look at using plyometrics and underspeed and overspeed, and really peak them and tweak them to be really clicking on all cylinders for stage 3. So if we go back to where we're at with Clark as far as the workouts, what we've done here is we've broken the sessions into 3 weeks, 3 per week, 3 weeks of stuff. He started this a few weeks ago, getting ready for stage 1 here, like I said, in the next week or so. So he's gone through the vast majority of this. And what we did was we created a very simple workout scheme for him, and we're cycling them through very basic steps. So the first step is just to get them going. Again, stage 2, we're going to be more advanced, and stage 3, the most advanced. What we did with him was to kind of take him back to the basics. We're looking at a really basic exercise, core separation. For us, core separation with the Swiss ball is the golfer, if we pull up the video, without the club in hand, having a Swiss ball between the knees to help isolate the lower body, to help him maintain good feet contact with the ground, resisting, pushing forward just a little bit, and resisting with a counterclockwise movement against clockwise movement of the upper torso around a stable spine. So what this is doing is it's sort of piecing lower body mechanics. Even though he's not moving fast or a lot, he's creating ground reaction dynamic, both linear and rotational. He's creating good stable foundation for spine stability and rotation. He's pulling muscles along the line of action, and he's just very nicely, very easily kind of working through a stretch-shortened scenario through the core, and at the same time working lower body and spine mechanics. So it's a very simple exercise, very crucial, a really good warm-up. We then work on the linear component. If you remember, he was a little bit late on forward weight shift, and it's a little bit unstable through the impact zone, a little bit of lateral instability there. So we're working him through an exercise called forward press. In the forward press pattern, again, without the club, he presses weight from the ball of his rear foot to the ball of his front foot and goes through a rotation without the club, goes through a forward swing rotation. And with the main emphasis being the blending of linear with rotational, facilitating rotation at the pelvis through a forward weight shift, not disjoint. We don't forward weight shift, then rotate. We don't bump the hip, then rotate. We press our weight forward as we're rotating simultaneously. So the forward press exercise does that for us. Left arm swing, right arm push. This is essentially a left arm swing where we emphasize the left arm doing its job. sort of pulling on the club and then releasing the club into the impact zone, while we focus on the right side doing its job, pushing the club. So it's not one or the other. It's a blend of a push and a pull. As he does that, he's releasing the club away from the arms, sort of facilitating that more effective timing of releasing the club into the impact zone. He's staying square to his spine or perpendicular to his spine, and the forward press and the right arm push keeps him moving into the left side, so re-emphasizing the forward press movement. We'll then have him do some half swings into impact bag, and this is where we get him in a half swing motion using an impact bag instead of a ball, ball between the knees, and we have him just fire from a half swing perspective, quick short response kind of action, loading the core through short response plyo type exercise into the impact bag, really emphasizing core contraction, driving the process. Lower body connection, core contraction. We then work into the same action with a towel snap, allowing him to brace, stiffen, and release the implement more effectively. Again, all these sets with the Swiss ball to really emphasize lower body connection to the ground. And then lastly, we'll do some full swings. Again, not really golf swings per se, but full swings with the Swiss ball into the impact bag, repetitive swings, emphasizing the entire movement, kind of bringing it all together. When we then move to session 2, we're going to continue the same set of exercises with the same progression. All 3 sets we're using the Swiss ball. Very simple, very, not static, but very, very strength-based as we make these movements. As we then move into session 3, what we're going to do is we're going to slowly wean him away from the Swiss ball. So now in session 3, he's going to do 2 sets with the Swiss ball, and then he's going to do a set without. And he's trying to carry those same feelings over without the ball. We're not asking him to make any really dramatic movements at this point in time yet, but we are asking him to do the stabilization stuff, the strength-based stuff, without the Swiss ball as a cue, and so we start to wean him off. You'll see session 4, again, 2 sets with, 1 set without. When we go to sessions 5 and 6, we're sticking with the same exercises, but as you might expect, we're now doing 1 set with a Swiss ball, 2 sets without the Swiss ball. So we're weaning him away from using that cue. And then for the last week, right before he goes to play, we do the same basic sequencing of exercises, all without the Swiss ball, all without the cueing, with the caveat that if he feels like he's not performing the exercise effectively, he can always grab the Swiss ball, use it for a few reps or even a set, and then go back. Because really we want to emphasize that feeling and then him being able to produce that feeling without the ball, which is absolutely crucial. Even though we're not moving really ballistically, we're still, and kind of moving more strength-based here, we're still going to sort of facilitate and encourage fast switch recruitment and put kind of like power mechanics, even though we're not moving at speed yet. So, you know, we are emphasizing strength-based, but we don't exclude speed from this as well. And as we move into the next sessions prior to stage 2, we'll really start to advance this and really start to look at speed and then also add other types of exercises into the mix. The last thing I'll say before I look at some of these questions is that these exercises don't replace strength and conditioning. They don't replace the coaching. So Clark is still doing strength and conditioning. He is still working with the coach. He's still working on technique. He's still practicing and playing. This is just sort of a way to sort of glue the two together, to take his athletic ability and hone it into the coordination that will allow him to produce the patterns that he and his coach are working on. So this doesn't replace anything. This just augments what he's already doing with strength conditioning, what he's already doing with his coaching and his practicing. So what I'll do here is see if there's any questions. It looks like there was a few questions, and I'll answer a few if I can, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Had a question about force plates. What force plates do you use, and what training aids do you recommend for teaching ground reaction force? We don't use force plates. You can use force plates. If you're going to use a force plate, though, the thing that I would recommend is that, you know, there's a number of different products, more like consumer-friendly products that are under, say, $20,000 that measure either dynamic balance or like center of pressure movement, and those are good for tracking center of pressure and giving you some biofeedback as you train, and they're also decent for diagnostic. Probably the best way to actually collect ground reaction force data is by using real force plates, 6 degree of freedom force plates that would allow you to measure, you know, not only the force application in X, Y, and Z, but also the moments around each axis. So you have a really complete view of shear force as well as normal force and the patterns that are being created to create torque. But there's I think it's a velocity. It's like a pressure a sensor kind of thing you stand on, which I've used and I think is great. Most of what we do, though, is without force plate and just by feel. You know, the exercises, a lot of them start with somewhat restricting the lower body so that the patterns that are produced are more efficient. So we use the Swiss ball, we use different things to sort of restrict the lower body movement, contain it, and make it sort of force it into an appropriate ground reaction force pattern, and then wean people away from the cueing. So we don't necessarily directly use those teaching aids because not everybody has them, and a lot of them are very expensive. So we've tried to find ways to do it. If you have the equipment, then it certainly can be implemented, and we would kind of answer those questions, you know, as we go, as people had specific questions about what you know, what they could do with their different training aids and different you know, data collection hardware. I don't see any other questions, so I think I'll wrap up there. This is just a basic overview. Wednesday, we're going to talk to Clark. We're going to talk to him, which I think we're going to stay away from getting too technical. I mean, we're really just going to talk to him about you know, what he's been experiencing over the past couple of years as he's made this sort of transition from college golf into pro golf, and we're going to look at him, you know, as far as biomechanics, look at him in terms of where he was, what he's doing, what he's feeling, where he's seeing the changes, where he feels like he still needs to do some work, and just talk about how he's been transitioning and utilizing this stuff in play. Because I think probably the biggest question overall is that we get from everybody is, you know, how do I really make use of improved movement patterns? How do I transition this stuff into my game? And how do I match it up with what I'm trying to do with respect to making shots and striking the ball and playing the game of golf? And that's the kind of stuff we're going to kind of focus on with Clark on Wednesday. If you haven't signed up for it, you know, definitely sign up for it. And even if you can't attend it, you know, something gets in the way or you know you're busy, sign up for it. We'll let you know when it posts to the YouTube or channel or to the blog, and then you can watch it. You know, from that perspective. So if you do have any other additional questions, I don't see any more on the panel. But if you have any other additional questions, just email me or give me a shout, and I'd be more than happy to try to respond and answer those questions. Appreciate you participating in this webinar, and I hope to see some of you on Wednesday when we talk to Clark directly. Thanks a lot.